Testing 1, 2. Much better.
Do that again. I apologize.
Okay. I'm attorney Phil Giacino, and this is the Phil Giacino Show coming at you from Strathmore Studios. We're starting a little bit early tonight because we got something exciting in the works. We're going to go on other platforms, not just Facebook. We're going to try to go on YouTube, Instagram. So it's a little bit of an experiment tonight. That's why my producer, Dan Giacino, wanted me to come in a little bit early. Normally we'd be starting at 7 o'clock. Today we started a little bit early.
So for any new viewers, what we're doing right now, we're actually live on the Phil Giacino Show on YouTube. So if you actually go to the Phil Giacino Show official, that is where we're live as well for this show. And we will be live for the duration of the next, for the upcoming future.
Right, and I'm not a ventriloquist. That was Dan Giacino you were hearing from. The topics for tonight: artificial intelligence, what could go wrong? Second segment is the midterms are coming in November, first Tuesday in November. It's a big deal, right? 2 years ago, Trump became president for the second time. Second time that happened, Grover Cleveland was the only other president to serve two non-consecutive terms. But the midterms are very, very important. We're going to get to that, what to look for, what is at stake. We're also going to talk about New Mexico. The Department of Justice in New Mexico sued Meta, and they won a big award. This is a civil case, not a criminal case. So there were civil penalties, $375 million. We're going to get to that. But before we get to the show, since we have a few minutes, today, America is back, baby. And I'm talking about space travel. Let me give my phone to Dan. And America, this is not private. This is the United States government, NASA. And this was launched from the Kennedy Space Center. Maybe it'll be called the Trump Kennedy Space Center next week. Who knows? But 4 astronauts launched on Artemis 2, the journey around the moon. They're not going to land on the moon, but this is a pretty big deal. We haven't been to the moon in many, many years. NASA hasn't been doing as much lately as they had in years past. You had Blue Horizon, and you had Elon Musk with his company, which I'm told is going to be going public. What's the name of that company, Dan?
I'm sorry, say that again?
The name of Elon Musk's private company.
Oh, SpaceX.
SpaceX, right?
Yeah.
Not Tesla. That's the car industry or the car division. But again, a really big deal. And we have 3 American astronauts and 1 Canadian. We felt bad because we beat them for the gold medal in men's hockey, women's hockey, and the Paralympics. So we decided to take a Canadian with us to make him feel better. But he's the rookie, so he has to carry the water. But Dan, give us now obviously you're not as old as I am, so in a sense I remember I think I was 5 years old when we first landed on the moon. And remember, you don't remember, but Kennedy said, we're going to do that and the other thing, and we're going to go to the moon. John F. Kennedy set the agenda, and we did it. Neil Armstrong got out and said, 1 small step for man, 1 giant leap for mankind. There were people there waiting for them, so they were able to tape him getting off. I'm only kidding.
Look, I remember every trip we ever took to Kennedy Space Center, and I think it was the best experience ever. You always made it a point to show me these kind of things, whether it be always giving homage to our heritage as Americans. Going to the moon was a huge, huge national accomplishment that I think that going back now, I think it's a great thing.
Right. And if you can't get to the Smithsonian, go to the Cradle of Aviation Museum, which is great. I went there a few months ago, and it starts off very simple with kite flying. Believe it or not, it talks about kites, and then it goes to planes, and then it goes to jet planes, and then it goes to rockets, and then it has a display where you actually see the lunar module, which looks pretty crazy. If you said to me, all right, you're going to go up in a rocket, you're going to go in that thing, and then you're going to walk around the moon and say, wait a minute. My car looks more reliable than that. And the power of your cell phone is more powerful than the computing that they had back in the 60s when they landed a man on the moon with some of these vehicles and rockets that you look back now and it might seem primitive, but it got them there. So if you can, take a look at the news tonight, read about it, Google Artemis 2. Today they launched successfully the 4 astronauts, NASA from the Kennedy Space Center. They're going to circle the moon. They're not landing on the moon, but they're still doing something that's going to be the next step, because eventually Elon Musk is setting a bold agenda. He wants to have people colonize Mars. So if you would have said that years ago, you'd be like, come on, that's a movie. But I think that's going to happen. Maybe not in my lifetime, but I think that's something that people want to do. You're going to have private monies going into it, which I think is important. Because I always say government is very inefficient when it comes to certain things. Not necessarily the space program, but I think private companies can assist or even do it better, and the military. But other than that, private enterprise, which is maybe, I think Musk is more advanced than Blue Horizon, SpaceX. Wouldn't you say that, Dan?
Well, they've certainly done more in terms of getting contracts and in terms of having heavier payload systems.
Well, wait. They got Katy Perry into space, so that's a pretty big deal.
Okay.
I got to say.
So some people's metrics, I guess you
Right.
could say that.
All right, so I think we're about to start on the topics for this evening. Okay, so let's talk about the first topic, which is artificial intelligence. And I'm calling this segment, What Could Go Wrong? The other day I was watching the news, and it actually showed, and it was funny because it was a delivery vehicle, robot, and it had eyes. And this robot, and I predicted this some years ago, that said, you know what, you order a pizza, it's not going to be some kid in a car dropping it off. You're going to have these robots, just like drones, dropping off pizzas and other things. And it showed, you know how like the bus stop, and they have a little shelter, and it has glass on each side. And now usually it has like a poster or something. This was just pure glass. And if you can get that up there, Danny, it actually showed a service robot crashing into the glass. It almost seemed like something out of a TV show. It was,
so I'm going to go full screen here.
it was
so
pretty
everyone can
comical.
see it.
So watch this. Okay, so you saw the delivery robot crash into the glass. Nobody was injured, but I think maybe those kinds of structures have to be mindful that certain types of robots, maybe 5 years from now, it won't even be an issue.
I just think it's funny. If you notice the eyes you were mentioning, they start to blink right after the crash.
I think it's like when you go to the supermarket and they have those robots that follow you around.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
They profile you, man. They're profiling you. No, they see somebody that looks a little shifty, they'll follow you. But that's just proof that AI is not perfect. Right? Humans aren't perfect. Somebody delivering a pizza can crash into a pole. You think AI works 100%, and you see what happens. Can you get me up the dancing robot? And that's from a Hot Pot restaurant in California. Figures California. So take a look at this. He stole my moves. This is not Japan. This is California. Thank God the robot didn't have the ability to hurt anybody. But they had to pretty much drag it off. It is going berserk. You can take that down now. So I thought that was pretty funny. In fact, I had seen that before the robot crashing into the glass. So what does that tell us? AI needs a little bit of work. Now, what exactly is AI? It's a branch of computer science dedicated to creating systems of performing tasks that typically require human beings. So we've had computers for years and years and years, but they didn't think for themselves. Or robots, we had like the Roomba, the vacuum, but we didn't have any sophisticated robots. Now we have robots that can do things that maybe 5 years ago we might have thought impossible. Right? In fact, Melania Trump walked out with a robot recently. Did you see that, Dan?
See what? I'm sorry, I was looking at the...
Melania Trump walked out with a robot.
You know what really creeps me out with this whole thing? What is their end game with all of this stuff? What do you think is their end game with this stuff?
They want a Terminator. No. What is the end game? I think they're going to want to replace. One of the things that's going to happen, and Elon Musk spoke about this, is a lot of jobs are going to be eliminated.
Well, so then why are we going for this technology?
Well, other jobs will be created, but I think it's almost.
Okay, can I say something
Sure.
about this? So now, I've heard people, including yourself, use the horse and carriage thing and say, "Oh, well, look, the horse and carriage went and came, cars were the next big thing." Yes, okay. Well, the thing about cars is it created jobs. Now, the thing that's different about this is that we're creating a robot that is going to take jobs. That they're trying to mass produce these things to take jobs. So yeah, there's going to be people that are going to have engineering jobs to maintain these things, but by and large, what this technology is doing is to replace human beings. We've never had were cars trying to replace people. No, they were a transportation mode for people to get from
They
point A to
replaced
point B.
horses.
They replaced horses, yes. But okay, that's an analogy we could use here. They replaced horses because they were essentially designed to replace horses. They get you to point A to point B
But I
faster.
think,
But when you look at this, though, I mean, look, it's robots. Why are we advancing this technology?
I'll tell you why. Human beings are not very good at protecting necessarily their own interest. There's a profit motive, right? Just like cell phones. Cell phones are a great thing, but they're also not a great thing. Look at Meta. We're going to talk about that. Meta got sued $375 million in fees because they created something where some people were actually harming themselves or committing suicide because certain platforms are telling them how to do it or to suggest that they kill themselves, which is pretty bizarre. So I think what happens is it's just like cloning. We're not supposed to clone. I think someday you're going to have that. Why? Because the expression, why did you do it? Because I can.
Oh, yeah.
We have the ability to. Now, it's fun if you say, I developed a program in chess that can beat a chess master. Big deal, okay? Pretty cool, but it's not going to harm anybody. It might hurt the feelings of a chess master. But I think there's a profit motive, and companies are out there, and they're going to do what they can to give some company an edge. Law firms now, Danny, are using artificial intelligence. I went to a seminar the other night. There are attorneys that are being punished, sanctioned, fined, because what they're doing is they're doing a search, an AI search. Could be ChatGPT, something like that. And they see a case. They run with it without properly shepherdizing or checking it. And then they submit it to a Supreme Court or a court of law, and the court looks it up and says, there's no such case. One of my paralegals, Jolene, looked up a case, and we didn't run with it because we're smart enough to check it out. The case didn't exist, Danny. Go figure. And in the seminar, they said what's happening is AI wants to help. So sometimes, and again, it's still in its infancy in a lot of ways, it'll come out and say, okay, we have a case for you. But if they're making up a case, they're not helping you. They're hurting you.
It just worries me that this stuff's going to get better and better and better.
Oh, it will.
And look what happened when people got phones. GPSs. How many people nowadays can
Map skills
read
are gone.
Okay, so that's an example of cognitive offloading. Once we learn that we don't need a skill, our brain atrophies.
Right. Well, look at when I was a kid in school, sometimes we would say to the teacher, what do I need to learn this? I have a calculator. And you know what they said? You're not going to be walking around with a calculator in your pocket. They were wrong. We do. So maybe someone's math skills might not be as sharp as they could be because every one of us has not only a computer in their pocket, but also a camera, a video camera, and a map. So if you're anywhere, as long as you get a signal, you could say, get me to 2 Jones Street, and it'll get you to 2 Jones Street. You don't need a map anymore. AAA used to be able to give you a map if you were driving somewhere. You don't need it anymore.
Well, that's why I'm saying there's examples of cognitive offloading that are when people don't need certain skills. And, I mean, if you look at right now, our skill set is going from... I mean, if we continue this AI trend where people now go to AI for a lot of their answers, because it's more efficient than Google. So if you go along this trend, I mean, what you're training your brain to do is... instead of remembering important information, you remember where to go to get that information.
Get it, right.
So it's a bit of a trade-off. You're trading off large amounts of doing the work. You're essentially what's that word? You're essentially giving that job, outsourcing that job to, ChatGPT.
Right. Well, I remember years ago I bought Encyclopedia Britannica, and I have all these volumes in a room off my man cave, and it takes up a lot of space. But years ago we didn't have cell phones, so if you wanted to look something up, you either ran to the library or you had the encyclopedia and you'd look it up. I don't remember the last time I went to an encyclopedia or a dictionary or almost any book.
Can I ask a question
Yes.
about, because you're somebody, not that you're old, I'm just saying you're from a different generation when people didn't have cell phones and whatnot.
Right.
Was there the same type of, I don't want to be rude here, was there the same type of ignorance in terms of when things were on a map, where things are on a map, when things were historically? Because I feel like if you ask people today when the Civil War happened, when you ask people when World War II happened, they might be centuries off. You ask people where a country is on a map, they might be thousands of miles off. When you were in high school, when you were a person who was in school, was this something that you would be, were you confident, let's say, in people coming to your school and asking you guys to point things out? Do you
No.
think you're...
It wasn't a thing. Like now they have videos where the guy, like, Jay Leno.
But I'm
he'd go
saying,
on
do
the
you
street
think
and
the
question
people that you went to school with were smart enough to say, this is America, this is, this is Africa, this is France?
Let me say this. Maybe a little bit better than, let's say, today's generation, but not so much. And you know what the amazing thing is this. I think if you're ignorant, it's your own fault. Because as I said, you have a computer in your pocket. Anything you want to know, anything. Like I Google, sometimes I'm listening to a song on the radio, and I'm like, oh, when did that song come out? In my day, you'd have to literally go to the library or call somebody that knows music very well. Now you don't need that. All you got to do is Google, when did the, Just Walk Away Renee song come out? And it'll tell you, 1970, whatever. If I wanted to get information, Danny, this is important. Right now, if you invest in a stock and you want to know about that stock, all you got to do is you can go to Robinhood, you can go to Charles Schwab. There's so many different platforms and so many different sources of information. When I was younger, if I wanted to invest in a stock, I literally had to go to the library or get a broker. And at the library, they have microfilm, microfiche, and the information is not as current. I'll give you a perfect example. Marvell shot up like 12% yesterday. You might have known about that, Dan. And I wanted to know why. I Googled, why did Marvell go up? And they worked out some kind of deal. I didn't read the whole article with NVIDIA. So that's why it went up 12%. It wasn't random. It wasn't just people saying, I want to buy Marvell today. There was information on the street. Mm-hmm. Information that I wouldn't have been able to get that quickly years ago, right? And that's a bonus. If I had magazines as a kid, like Time Magazine, or my dad used to get Popular Mechanics. That was it. That's what you were limited to, or Newsday or something like that, God forbid. But now you have access to anything out there.
Okay, yes, you have access to anything out there, but I don't think that necessarily translates to a more intelligent or more informed population.
No, because most people don't care.
Well, yes, but I don't think that having a phone in your hand with all the information that you need. I mean, people's priorities on their phone are Instagram. People's on social media.
Not for me.
Okay, well, the vast majority of people, I think anyone could probably subscribe to that and say the vast majority of people who use their phones don't necessarily use it for hounding news. It's mainly social media. I think that's a safe bet.
Right, but I think that the smart people or the people that use it wisely can better themselves.
Well, cream's always going to rise to the top. Yes, people who are going to know how to use a tool like that are going to better themselves. But on the whole, the masses, I think it's a bad thing.
I don't think it's a bad thing. I think it's a thing. And some people will use it. It's like there's gyms all over the place. Some people go to the gym and benefit. Some people don't. But it's there. You don't have to go to the gym. If you want information, I'll give you an example.
But
Dan.
you would have to go out of your way to go to a gym. I'm saying,
but it's still
like
there.
McDonald's, though. Like a McDonald's, you would have to go out of your way to make that bad decision to go eat that food.
Uber.
Okay, Uber Eats. You don't necessarily have to make that. Okay, but what I'm saying is, it's easier to, like, it's easier to get that McDonald's than it is to get, say, what was the other analogy? I'm sorry.
I don't know.
I have the.
You tell me.
I have it playing in my ear, so I'm listening to both. But I think, I don't know. I don't think having all that information translates to a smarter population. And if it did, I think we would have seen something by now. Because everybody has a phone, and it seems like we have a dumber population than most countries. And I don't say
because
that
some people are lazy. Like let me give you an example. I consider myself very knowledgeable on certain things like the Civil War, certain sports, and I don't know it all. So sometimes I'm thinking about something, or I'm watching a game, or I'm thinking about the Civil War, or I'm reading an article, and I'm not sure about something. I know, like, okay, they surrendered at Appomattox Courthouse, and Lee's horse was Traveler, but there might be something. Okay, what was the exact date? I know the year, but I might say, what was the exact date? I was listening to something about how they buried all those men in Lee's front yard, Arlington. Mm-hmm. And I knew a lot about it, but I didn't know everything. So I went on, I did some research, and I gained some information. Or when I travel, before I go anywhere, Dan, I watch YouTube videos. Or I'll Google, okay, I'm going to Sicily in May into June. I want to learn about it. I might Google, what's the best time to go to Sicily or Italy? And they say the shoulder season. You don't want to go in July and August. How did I get that information? All I did is Google it. And then I build on the information that I already had, and then I go from there. Okay?
Yeah, I mean, yeah. Like I said, smart people will know how to utilize certain things.
And the ones who use it better than others gain an advantage. I'll give you another example. Remember the yellow pages, Danny? You know what they are.
Of course.
You probably haven't used them, right?
No, because they're obsolete.
Maybe not even in your life. That's what we used to use. In fact, the first law firm I had, and this is a good example, the first law firm that I worked for out of the DA's office had the first page in the yellow pages. They got more calls than other firms. Why? Because they were the first page. Then firms that saw the value of the internet started doing things before other attorneys, so that gave them an advantage over other attorneys that didn't tap into the internet. And then AI now here. So the firms or lawyers that are able to use AI as a tool better than other lawyers may benefit from it professionally or financially, right? So it's a thing. Some people are never going to use it. I had a client, when I first started to appreciate ChatGPT, I had a client who did certain things and gave me information, and I'm like, what is this? Because, like you said, you just do a Google search and it just spits out what it is. This was ChatGPT or something like it, maybe not exactly. And I'm looking at this and I'm like, where'd you get all this stuff? And he said it was a search engine, but an AI search engine, which I thought was pretty amazing because I had never seen it. Now I'm familiar with it. And now I use AI to some extent. And I think that's important.
I think AI is certainly, I think the bottom line is we have to find a balance where it doesn't threaten people and it doesn't threaten people's jobs. Because if they're trying to build robots that can nearly do everything that we do, from folding a shirt to lifting 40-pound boxes, and also at the same time having these, mass producing them, I don't really, self-driving cars, what could this, it's not like it takes an economist to really see that they're trying, whether or not they're trying, what the bottom line is, they're most likely going to squeeze out a lot of people from jobs.
Right. I want to give two examples. Let's go to camera one, Danny, okay? Elon Musk said not that long ago that AI is going to take over or replace a lot of workers. And he's saying something dangerous. He's saying we might have to go to universal income to give people money who are displaced. Almost like a form of welfare, if you think about it. And another thing is, and you heard of this too, Dan, that Tesla's not a car company. It's an information company. Now, My best buddy, Larry, I think some years ago, he thought about a Tesla, but he wasn't going to buy one yet. His car broke down. He ended up buying a Tesla. It's self-driving. Now, I've never been in a self-driving car. He says he likes it. You got to stay awake. Obviously, you can't go to sleep. It monitors your eyes. But is it safer? A self-driving car, is it safer than a car driven by a human being? Now, assuming all the kinks are worked out, I would say yes, because a human can consume alcohol or a drug that can impair their ability to operate. They can get distracted. They can be tired. Presumably, a Tesla doesn't do that, right, Dan? A Tesla doesn't get drunk. A Tesla doesn't get distracted. So I'll give you an example, Danny. Let's say you had a kid who was 17 years old.
Okay.
Would you feel more comfortable about giving that kid the keys to a car and say, okay, you're going to go to a party tonight. You might drink. I don't know. I'm telling you not to drink, but you might drink. Or here's a self-driving vehicle that's going to take you and your buddy to the party, and it's going to bring you home at the end of the day. What would you prefer? Let's go back to camera 2.
I mean, you're probably not going to like my answer because I don't necessarily trust them.
Okay.
I would say I would trust my son making the right decision. I wouldn't let him go if I didn't trust that he would make the right decision.
Okay.
But I wouldn't trust a robot to drive my children.
That's fair. But someday, Danny, I have grandkids, 4 and 1. Someday they're going to be in cars and before they're adults even, that are self-driving. And if it gets better and better and better, you might eliminate accidents, Danny. Because generally what causes accidents?
Human error.
Human error.
I just want to mention a couple of things. So now this is you going back to what Elon Musk said about having universal income,
universal basic income.
Basic income. This is not the first time that somebody has pitched this idea that machines will all of a sudden make everything easy. I mean, if you go back early to the 1900s, there was predictions that people would work only a few hours a day.
Right.
Then you go back even to the 1930s, you have people predicting 15-hour work weeks. And then you go to the 1950s, and they even called it the Jetsons' future. They actually thought it was going to be 20-hour work weeks. They thought you were going to retire your 40s and 50s. And we're talking in the 50s and 60s about the future. So, and then the 70s and 80s, they pretty much thought we were going to be working from home. I'm sorry, not working from home. Like office work would be drastically reduced. So it seems that they always give us these promises of like this greatly reduced work or greatly highly promised things that never really pan out exactly how it is. Because what has happened historically, just going by all of these, we work more, we get less. That's just going by.
I think it also depends on the industry. Like, look, there was a time where people were screaming, automation will cost people their jobs. And as a species, we're still around. When Henry Ford built the Model T, you had an assembly line. Then all of a sudden, robots came out. Right? Not robots like AI robots necessarily, but robots to paint the car, to do certain functions that freed up people. Or I'll give you an example, a bomb squad, right? You're going to have robots that are going to do the job of some of those bomb, I don't even know what you call them, but bomb police, or the person that deals with a bomb. I don't know what the terminology is, but if you could have a robot do that and the bomb goes off, you just saved somebody's life. Look at warfare, Danny. Warfare is different than it was just like the Civil War. They'd walk toward each other and blow each other to bits.
Yeah,
then you had different type of fighting.
I'd like to point this out. Within one war, artillery used to be the number one killer in all of warfare for hundreds of years. We're talking World War I. We're talking all the way till, I believe, well past Vietnam. Within one conflict, drones overtook artillery as the number one things that killed human beings. So that's just food for thought.
Right, but it saves soldiers' lives. But now it makes warfare cleaner, which is not necessarily a good thing. It's a good thing it saves lives, but it makes it very easy. If you really want to follow this trajectory, it puts countries like us at a huge disadvantage because it makes countries that can produce these little crappy drones that are very cheap,
It makes us with massive missiles have to spend a lot of money to intercept them. It's harder to intercept.
We have to adapt. You know the expression adapt or die. We're going to have to adapt, and I think we're in a better position than most other countries on the planet to adapt. We have smart people, we have money, we have resources. We just have to stay. And you make a good point that other countries can almost catch up to us, but if we're smart enough, they won't.
I don't have a lot of trust in us being smart. Come on, look at all the mistakes that we've made. I don't. We're about to run out of money in 2033 and 2034 for Medicare, for Medicaid, and for Medicaid disability. Do you think that our country is smart enough, or have they ever shown us anything in terms of being responsible enough to take care of a problem before it happens the day of?
Well, you know what? Then I blame the electorate in a sense, because we have to make sure we elect politicians that are, and it's not that easy to do, but we have to, look, the city is probably going down the tubes because they elected Memdani. That's on them. Maybe the next time they won't just make such a stupid decision. We have to elect, and it's not all, I'm not saying it's only the Republicans or it's only the Democrats. We have to elect people that will do the right thing. We got midterms coming up soon. The direction of the country, which the next segment we're going to get to in about a minute, the next segment is about the midterms. That's the trajectory of our country. All right? Because Trump has 2 more years left after the midterms. If the midterms go with the Democrats, they're going to tie him up and impeach him if we're not careful. So like I said, let's transition now to that second segment, okay, Danny? Because I see that the time is flying by. The midterms are going to happen in November. You're going to have all House seats and a number of Senate seats up for grabs. Traditionally, I think it only happened in the last 22 midterms, only twice did a president hold. When I say hold, meaning didn't lose any House representatives. Right? Obama didn't do it. Trump didn't do it. Biden didn't do it. George W. Bush did it in 2000. I think it was 2002. Right? Which is a rarity. So that shows you how hard it is. So history is against President Trump these midterms. So what I want to talk about now is what to look for in November and leading up to November to see how the Republicans may do, how the Democrats may do. Now, this is my list, right? You might have the same list, but look at the Iranian situation. That's been like a wild card. So if you would have said a year ago, look for the Iranians, you wouldn't have. But now you have to. Because if the Iranian situation is still around, like Vietnam dragged on for years, if the Iranian situation is still with us in September, October, the Republicans are in trouble. If it's no longer an issue, the Republicans will benefit. Look at gas prices. People are losing their minds because they're paying extra money for gas, $1 or so more than they had been. Look at California; it's like $5, $6, $7. It's ridiculous. Maybe even higher. You know, we're paying a bit more than we were a number of months ago. So look, Iranian situation, gas prices. Look at the overall economy with an eye toward consumer prices. So people go to the store. If they feel they're being raked over the coals, paying a lot for gas, paying a lot for staples like eggs and milk, and the Iranian situation is still in the news, the Republicans are going to get beat, probably in a big way. But if those things fall in a different way, like they're under control, gas prices are down, prices overall are down, the stock market's doing well. It's not always the best indicator, but you want the stocks to be doing well. Then the Republicans have a better chance. Also, I don't know if you knew this, Trump's approval rating, or any president's approval rating, 50% or above. So if Trump's approval rating is 45% going into the midterms, that's a negative. And it could be. If his approval rating is 50% or more, that's a positive. Right? George W. Bush, was flying high. So he carried that momentum into the midterms, and he won the midterms. When I say he won, he wasn't on the ballot, but they won the midterms. Danny, are you listening?
Yes.
The Iranian situation, gas prices, overall economy, consumer prices, Trump's approval rating. What other things do you see as a voter, as a consumer, as an American, leading into the midterms? What other things, in addition to what I just said, are you looking at?
I have a different take on some of these things that you do. I'll be very honest. One of the big things that I think is, regardless of the way that this is going to play out, whether, let's say we go in there tomorrow and without ground troops, we get a full capitulation from them, full unconditional surrender, it wouldn't win people like me. It wouldn't win our vote. It wouldn't win our vote because he ran on a lot of things and he did a lot of them, but when you have the Epstein list and you say what files and you kind of gaslight the people about
I don't think
that,
Epstein's going to matter to people in November. I really don't.
Look, I think you're underestimating that big time. That's just, look, you asked me what I think, and I'm telling you what I think. I'm thinking people my age, we are done with the people getting away with murder, getting away with, in this case, rape. There's a lot of people that are pissed off. What did Trump say? No new wars. I mean, what did Bush say that got him unelected? No new taxes. Read my lips. What did Trump say? I'm just going by historical, precedent. No new wars. And then what happens when you start a war? And I get that he's saying that, look, they can't have a nuclear weapon.
I agree with what he did.
Hold on. But when they say that, look, they can't have a nuclear weapon, we were in talks with them in the middle of negotiations, and then we started killing them. So
do you think you know as much as Hegseth or Trump?
No, I don't. But I'm saying I do think that and I'm gonna ruffle some feathers with this, but this is my opinion. This is not my father's opinion. When you have somebody like Joe Kent, who's telling us that I stepped down because I felt that I'm not going to mention the country by name. We were pressured by a foreign country to do this war, and I stepped down.
Are you talking about Israel?
I'm not saying the country's name. I'm Israel. Israel, I feel that Israel gave us a little bit of pressure into this war. We have people stepping down in positions saying that we were pushed into this. We have people like Mike Huckabee, basically coaching. I'm sorry, not Huckabee. I think it was actually Lindsey Graham coaching Trump on how. I'm sorry, not coaching Trump. Coaching Netanyahu on how to get Trump to attack Iran. It's what I see is just war hawks surrounding Trump, and what I think is that whatever happened, this is not the Trump that we saw before. Whatever happened, something changed, and there's war hawks in there. They want war. We're going bankrupt. Whatever happened to people saying that we're going bankrupt, and now we're spending more money on the war. Gas prices are going up. Now, let me ask you something. If Trump says we're going to leave the Middle East in about 3 weeks' time,
right?
What do you think that's going to do to oil prices? Because the Philippines recently
depends what's going on in the Straits of Hormuz. That's a big deal.
Well, as long as they let traffic through, which they didn't signal that they were going to do, the main thing is Iran's strategy is very simple. They want to choke the Straits of Hormuz and show the world that the only way that the American economy holds its value is with cheap oil. Iran holds the cards right now because nobody will cross the Straits. So when Trump says we're going to leave in 3 or 4 weeks, that kind of plays in Iran's hands because now they're going to say, all right, well, we have 3 to 4 weeks where we can just keep the Straits closed. Now we control what ships go through.
He could be bluffing. Trump.
He could be bluffing, but my point is this. Have they been able to open the Straits with all the bombs they've dropped on Iran? We have killed their leader. We've maimed the second leader. We've literally evaporated their navy. We've bombed nearly every single infrastructure, and they're still hammering Israel.
Dan, let me just say this. I believe that Trump knows more than you do. Rubio knows more than you do, and me.
Okay.
So
I think that's fair. I'm not saying I know
faith. I think we sound ridiculous if we think we know Trump's next move. I don't even know if Rubio knows Trump's next move.
No, he doesn't, because when he was asked about it, he said one thing and then he went back on it.
Let me finish my thought. So I have faith in Trump. I saw videos of him years ago talking about this very topic, and he's still consistent. And I believe Iran is the worst country in that part of the world. No question, Iran.
So, but why didn't we let Israel do this? Why did we have to jump into this?
They couldn't do it on their own.
But hold on. But now you say that, but we destroyed their nuclear facilities in Operation Midnight Hammer. So why did we need to participate in this specifically?
Because they probably know something you don't know.
Because the nuclear stuff was off the table, supposedly. So why are we getting into this? Why didn't we just let Israel fly solo? Because according to Marco Rubio, his exact words were, we knew Israel was going to launch a preemptive attack. It was going to precipitate an Iranian response, and we took the initiative and launched a preemptive strike. That's him word for word. Okay. That doesn't sound like somebody who is really saying that, we took our own initiative. That's somebody who's saying, look, our allies pushed our hands when they told us they were going to attack. So you mix that in with what Joe Kent is saying about saying that we're being pressured into a war with this, by an ally. I think it puts us into an odd area where we need to really get our priorities straight. We have a lot of internal problems. Our infrastructure is falling. We need to compete with AI, and the only way to do that is build nuclear reactors. How are we going to do this with money if we don't have, we don't have cash?
That's the question. If Trump's presidency is hanging on this issue now, right? He made a decision, and he's going to have to live with it. And either it's going to work or it's not going to work, right? Just like when Biden pulled out of Afghanistan, it was a disaster. Right? Not only did we lose 14 service members.
Those are two people thinking on totally different wavelengths. I'm not.
I understand that, but I'm saying.
I agree with you.
Right. Look, I have a lot of respect for President Trump, and I trust his judgment, and I trust Rubio. I do, even more than Vance or Hegseth.
They have to earn my trust when you say something. When you're what is Rubio's position? Not the speaker. He's the Rubio's position. I'm sorry.
Right. Secretary of State.
Secretary of State. So when you say something like that, and then a few days later you now are saying something very different, I mean, your words mean something, right? You're not just some politician who's running. You're a very powerful person.
Right. But also the landscape can change. You might say, okay, we decimated them, and then you find out, oh my God, we didn't get them all.
Well, what do you think about this, though? What do you think about us finding out that the Iranian missiles can actually launch much farther than we thought?
Okay, well, now we got to take that into consideration.
I think that it should have been something looked into before.
Maybe, but war is fluid. Look at even World War II, right? Even the great generals and the president at the time, mistakes can be made. When Lincoln was fighting, remember how many generals did Lincoln have to go through? Remember he said, if you're not going to use the army, give it back to me or something like that.
I know exactly. I don't know his name. I know what you're talking about.
So if you looked at that and said, well, Lincoln said this and Lincoln said that. Yeah, but war is not perfect. It's not even a sports game. You have to call an audible occasionally because things change, right? You fumble the ball, the next play is going to be a pass where you thought it was going to be a run. In war, things happen, and you can't always predict what's going to happen next. And you have to have good generals. You have to rely on the good generals. And if this turns out to be bad, Trump's legacy is going to be destroyed.
Well, what about the idea that Trump was very insistent on? Well, before I say that, what about Vietnam? Because Vietnam's a perfect example of when there's nobody can say that the Vietnamese was a better military force than us.
No, but we didn't go away there to win, unfortunately.
We dropped more. Let me just explain this. More bombs on both sides. More bombs were dropped in Vietnam than all of Europe in World War II. And what did that do?
Right.
That did nothing.
And that was we didn't do a very good job there, but we did in World War II.
But what I'm trying to get at is you could only bomb a country so much until you realize that you don't have as much leverage as you thought you did. And unfortunately, we realized that in Vietnam when it was a little bit too late. And I'm wondering if that is what is happening in Iran right now, because I don't want to see us sending ground troops there. It's the most unpopular vote amongst Americans. But Danny,
you can bomb a country into submission. Look at Japan.
Okay, well, we nuked them.
Right.
Okay, so the country that has nukes in this equation is Israel.
Mm-hmm.
And Israel has never acknowledged that they have nukes.
Haven't used them yet.
They haven't used them yet because they've never been in this situation before. It's a possibility. I'm not saying that they would do it. I'm just saying if a country gets desperate enough, they have the right for self-defense. So what happens if Iran is just hammering Israel and what happens?
They're going to do what they have to do.
And
it might be justified. It's like if someone comes at you with a knife and you have a gun, you're not supposed to pull it?
If you start the war and then you can't handle what's going on, it's almost like you're a defense attorney. If somebody starts a fight and then, oh shit, I can't win this fight, and then they shoot the person in the head, right? Like, because that's essentially what a nuke does. It's like an instant kill. Wouldn't that person be like, okay, so well, you still shot the person, but you instigated it. So
well, you can't instigate it, but this is
that's
different.
My point. That's my point.
But this is different. This is not criminal law. This is international.
This war. All I'm saying is, if they start losing and they use a nuke, is that justified?
It could
because
be.
You started the war and then you're losing it, and then you can't really claim self-defense
Well,
when
let me
you
ask you
started
this:
it.
if you had a crystal ball and you knew that Iran wanted a nuclear weapon, and Iran, we know they said this: death to Americans, death to Israel. And if you knew they were about to get a nuclear weapon, and once they got it, they were going to come after you, what would you do?
Well, let me ask you something. Isn't this exactly what North Korea was saying? North Korea has a nuclear bomb. North Korea actually has a hydrogen bomb. They can put it on an actual missile. So this is a situation that we've had before. And we've seemingly brought North Korea to the negotiation table because they have nukes. So I don't think that it's a foreign concept that we can talk with a country, because look, if there's anything that's clear to people, it was once Kim got the nuke, what did Trump do? He had to negotiate with him, because guess what? You have to negotiate with someone once they get the nuke. What did that tell any other country that had nuclear aspirations? That tells them what you have to do to ensure your regime's survival is get a nuclear weapon at all costs.
Okay, but our country has made a decision that North Korea is not the threat that Iran is.
Well, because we made deals with them. I think Trump
Whatever.
because I don't see the possibility of Trump shaking hands with any Ayatollah anytime soon. Trump did the right thing with North Korea. He immediately talked to them, which is what I think that we should have done with Iran. Don't you think that it would have been a little bit better? Because look, we have an example. A country who hated us got the bomb, and we went to the negotiation table with them, and seemingly things went okay for a while. Now they're starting to get a little bit pissed off because America is attacking.
Yeah, but North Korea hasn't been killing Americans since '79.
No,
they've
just been killing South Koreans.
Okay, well,
but those are our allies.
Okay, but not to the extent that Iran has. Look what Iran did during the Reagan administration. The bombings.
Well, let's also be
hostages.
realistic. Let's also be realistic. Look what we did to that country. We were responsible for lots of coups in that region. CIA was responsible for replacing a certain person and putting the Shah in control because he was loyal to America, which is what led to the Ayatollahs taking over and becoming an Islamic State. We replaced that country's leader with a very weak person who didn't necessarily have all the
but
power.
Danny, let me say this. Trump can't undo the past. He can only look at where we're going, where Iran is going. A decision was made, and I'm going to respect that decision.
I respect that decision too.
Right. And again, if it doesn't pan out well, we will be critical of President Trump. I'm not above saying I think he made a mistake. I'm not there yet. Because I don't trust Iran. I never did.
I mean, I certainly trust President Trump more than I trust Iran,
right.
But I'm saying when you go back on things that you ran on, you lose your base support.
But things change. It's like saying to coach, hey, you said the first 4 plays are going to be runs, and then a fumble happened, and you have to pass because it's 2nd and 11. Things happen.
What key things have changed that would lead this?
We don't know what's changed. We don't have the information, and I think it's a mistake for many people on the outside. We're not on the inside. We don't know. We don't get briefed like congressmen do.
Is, though, that when we went into Iraq and Iran, Iraq with the nuclear, they were very clear on the mission. They have nuclear weapons, and we want to go in there and we want to eliminate that. There's always been a clear mission and what we're trying to do. This time, we don't know what we're trying to do. Like I will go back.
I don't know about that. I don't know if that's
I'll go
true.
back to the words of Marco Rubio. The reason why we did this is because Israel was going to precipitate an attack. I'm sorry, Israel was going to attack Iran. We knew that was going to precipitate a response, so we decided to take the initiative. That's according to Marco Rubio. So that doesn't seem like a clear objective. A clear objective would say, look, we want regime change. Whether or not that's the case or not, it doesn't exactly seem like regime change has happened. We were very clear in the beginning. They were saying it over and over again on the news. We're hoping for an Iranian uprising, and the people, it didn't happen.
Hasn't happened yet.
hopefully,
I'm hoping it will get the Shah back in there.
ultimately they're going to decide what's going to happen with that country. But I do think that realistically, comparing North Korea to Iran is very different. We've had a lot of intervention in the Middle East, not as much as we've had in places like North Korea and South Korea.
Look,
we've had a war there,
presidents
yes,
in the past have made mistakes. What can Trump do about that? Nothing. He doesn't have a reset button. So we have to go forward. And I'm gonna say to him, you have my trust. Do the right thing. And again, we talk about time frames. I want to
respond to Jolene. I want to actually go to Israel and
see, Danny. I can't see.
how they would
I can't
treat
see any.
somebody
1 second,
about
Danny.
Christianity.
Danny, stop. I can't see any comments.
It's because it's not coming up on the stream thing.
So I don't know who's commenting.
Let's see.
If you can get that up for me, then
I'll pull it up in a second. But
because I tell people to comment so I can comment or respond, and I don't see it.
there's no comments at the moment.
You just said Jolene made a comment.
Well, there is, but not that you would be able to see. I'm sorry.
Well,
I can read some of them out here, but
if there's something relevant, let me know.
So I have one from Jolene. If Iran does not negotiate kick the can down the road, the next dumb president who can give what they want, they can continue to build and build and build. Richard Rose said, what about NATO doing a little after begging us to attack Russia over the Ukraine? Good point. I'm waiting to say jokes. Megan Lupin's. I'm waiting for him to say the jokes I left for him. I think that's something that you and her had arranged, I guess.
The jokes she left for me, I'd have to see. She left me jokes? Oh, I don't know. Hold on.
I want to make it clear. I am not anti-Semitic. That is not what I am trying to convey here.
Okay.
Do you have the notes that? Or are you looking for something else that was?
No, Megan said something about jokes. I don't see jokes. Okay. But a couple of things. So, with regard to the midterm, let me get back to that because we really got off track here. Right now, the Republicans have about 217, 218. You need 218 for the majority. The 435 House members. Democrats have 212 to 214. The reason why there's a range, people retire, some people die, people quit. Vacancies about 3 to 4. So it is a razor-thin lead for the Republicans. If they lose a couple of House seats, the Republicans are going to have the advantage. The Democrats will have the advantage. And what will the Democrats do? They are going to impeach President Trump. We know that for a fact. They probably won't have the numbers in the Senate to remove him, but they're going to impeach him. Remember they impeached him twice before during the first term? So what does that do? That gums him up. It makes it difficult for him to pass anything legislatively. That's why the big, beautiful bill, which became law, he pushed very, very hard because he knew deep down that if he loses the midterms, he can't get anything through. He almost didn't get it through when he had a slight majority. So what does that mean? He'd have to do executive orders, or he'd have to do something different than what he wants to do. He can't be like a bull and push things through. So that's the problem. It's a razor-thin lead, and that could disappear. If the House goes to the Dems, I see bad things happening if the Democrats are in charge of the House, because then you could have gridlock. Now, sometimes people say gridlock's a good thing, but Trump wants to get certain things done legislatively that he won't be able to do. Thank God the big, beautiful bill got passed. And remember, if you watch the movie Lincoln, it talks how he passed the 13th Amendment when the Republicans, and not the Democrats, ended slavery. He had to basically beg, borrow, steal, bribe, you name it, to get everybody in line to pass the 13th Amendment. That's what Trump had to do with the big, beautiful bill, that in time, because don't forget, it just kicked in the beginning of the year. We're only in April now, April 1st. Oh, I was going to say an April Fool's joke, but I didn't get to it. April is April 1st. So we're only 3 months in, 3 months and a day into the new year. So I'm told by my accountant that the big beautiful bill will save me quite a bit of money in my taxes. Other people have told me that they're saving money or they're getting more money back. No tax on tips. Those kinds of things are going to help the American people. If he's not able to pass anything legislatively, any executive order he signs in 2 years, if a Democrat wins the presidency, those can be all undone. Just like Biden undid Trump's executive orders, and Trump undid Biden's executive orders. It's not a legislation that would need a majority and so on, which is harder to reverse. So let's go to the next topic, if we can. New Mexico sued Meta, and they hit them with the court did, $375 million in civil penalties, not criminal, civil. So that those are fines that they have to pay. Now, what was this about? The court ruled that Meta intentionally designs platforms to addict young people, and contrary to Meta's public sentiments, expose them to dangerous content related to eating disorders and self-harm and suicide. Now, when I heard that decision, and it may be reversed on appeal, right? So this is the state level, and it's going to go up on appeal, and it could make its way to the United States Supreme Court potentially, and they could reverse it. So whenever you see a case that says one side wins, if it's appealed, it can be changed. So when I first saw that, one of the things I thought about is where does personal responsibility come in? Now, these are young kids, many of them, so it's a little bit different than you saying, oh, the adults should know better. But those teenagers have parents. Those young people have parents. Now, are the parents looking out for those kids to the extent they need to be looking out? We use an example, Danny. I had asked you a question about if you had a kid, would you want him to be in a self-driving car? But
yes.
Forget about that for a second and say you have a 17-year-old kid who's a jerk-off, and he likes to drink and he likes to do drugs, and he's very irresponsible. Would you give him the keys to a car? You wouldn't, right? No. You'd say that child is not responsible enough. They're not an adult. I don't trust them to take the wheel of a car. Well, maybe if you have a child that has some mental health issues at a younger age, maybe you don't give them a smartphone. Maybe you give them a phone that allows them to call people, but not a smartphone where they can go on social media and look up these crazy sites that might influence them in some way. So what is the responsibility of a parent? I think parents can do better. Some do, some don't. So I think you have to look at, like, if a kid commits suicide, I'm not blaming the parent necessarily, but what did the parent do to protect that child? Did she take the child for therapy? Did she maybe remove a smartphone? Did she do something so that kid couldn't go on a social platform that told the kid how to commit suicide? That would be nuts if the parent knew about that and didn't take action. Now, it can extend beyond social media. So there's Instagram, and there's Threads, and there's Facebook, and what's the other one? TikTok. And some of them are crazy. Some of them, these kids and adults do like the stupidest things. Sometimes it's embarrassing to see some of the videos that they put out. And sometimes you can't help it. It just pops up on your feed. So that's social media. Now that New Mexico won, can they now go after, let's say, fast food places? You know how the tobacco industry was brought down in the 90s? Can they go after McDonald's and say, McDonald's is intentionally making young people and all people fat? What do you mean intentionally? Well, they have commercials, and they show a quarter pounder with cheese, and people are weak, and they want that quarter pounder with cheese. So what are they going to do? If you go to McDonald's enough, you're probably not going to be in good health, and then you might have a coronary, and you might have diabetes, and that harms your body. But whose job is it to stop you from going to McDonald's? Couldn't you just say, I'm going to eat healthy? No one's putting a gun to your head to go on Facebook. Nobody's putting a gun to your head to eat McDonald's. So my question is, where are we going? What's your take on that, Danny? Give me a couple of minutes of what you think about that decision, where they're saying Meta was at fault for the reasons I just said, and who else could be in the crosshairs?
I mean, a lot of it falls under personal responsibility, but I do think that there is unreasonable products out there that are just, they're just like when you go to McDonald's and they have the huge, large drinks, like that.
Right.
But
which they don't even, like you go to Burger King, as small as like bigger than anything I used to get at McDonald's.
yeah,
But again, no one's forcing me to drink it.
no,
Right?
I wonder what the conversation about that would be for say people on assistance.
Public assistance?
Yeah.
Well, they talk about some states have it where you can't use
I think Texas
welfare,
has something like that,
or you
right?
can't use welfare to, let's say, buy potato chips or fast food or cookies. You can use it to buy bread, milk, eggs, other things like that, or maybe you can't buy soda. What do you think about that? I know what you do at your job, you give people financial help. What do you think about a state saying, like a nanny state almost, and say, look, we're giving you money to buy food, but we don't want you to buy food that's going to harm your body, so we're looking out for you, so you can't buy soda with that.
Look.
What do you think about that?
I look at it more from a perspective of, at the end of the day, it's really just subsidizing those big companies, because the number one things that people buy is soda. With the SNAP, I had some notes on
Snacks,
it before.
things like that.
It's mostly sodas and things like that, and a lot of it is like subsidizing those big companies. A lot of them, they make a big
like
chunk
the Big
of
Four
their business.
or whatever it is.
Yeah, a lot of them make a big chunk of their business on that. But I do see it. That's like the number one thing. Sodas are the most number one thing that you see people walk in with, or like the Big Gulp or something. But it's not something that's ever going to change, because imagine being the legislator bringing that forward and saying, yeah, we're gonna get rid of all that. You're never gonna get it.
Right, and you get donations from Coca-Cola.
Oh yeah, and that's when things get even more dirty.
Right. So I don't think it's necessarily a bad idea. Now they could say, oh, it's racist because a lot of the people that are on public assistance are minorities, so you're telling them they can't buy soda.
But the important thing is the whole point of it is SNAP. SNAP stands for SNAP Nutritional Assistance Program. Nutrition is the key word.
Okay, so outlaw soda.
There's no nutritional value in a can of Coke.
No, like I'm saying, maybe the people that you're trying to help, because if they get diabetes and then it's another drain on the system, because they're also getting, like, what is it, Medicaid?
Medicaid, yeah, Medicare. The certain criteria they meet in certain.
Right. So if we're letting people buy crap that's going to harm them, that's a double whammy on society, because my tax dollars are paying for that SNAP. I don't get SNAP. When I want food, I buy it. If I want to buy a Mountain Dew, I haven't done that in a while, I can buy a Mountain Dew. Well, the government can't tell me what to do. But if the government's giving me money, maybe they can. Right? Maybe they should be able to say, okay, we want you to be able to buy food to support yourself and your kids.
Well, I think it's also important to what's the word? Incentivize healthier foods that would help out farmers. Obviously, when you're getting food, you don't want to give your kids sugary food. You want to have them having a healthy meal.
Right.
You want to have them greens.
Right.
Vegetables.
I read an article today, right? In fact, I didn't bring it with me, but potato farmers are hurting. You know why? Because these medicines that help people lose weight, I call it cheating, but when you take row or those kinds of things, people are eating less food. And people are eating less food like potatoes. So potato farmers are hurting now because their business is down. Now you could say, oh my God, I feel bad for them. Well, we want people to be healthy, right? So maybe people are buying less potato chips. Where does potato chips come from? Potatoes.
If the trade-up is having a healthier and thinner population, then I think that might be a trade
Right.
worth having.
Right. And then the potato farmers have to adapt or die, right? So if you have an industry where there's more fierce competition, maybe you look a different way. Maybe I don't sell it to a potato chip company. Maybe I do something else with my potatoes. I don't know. Be innovative, right?
Well, potatoes are a huge source of starch.
Right.
Starch is a lot of industrial things.
Right.
I know they make like cowboy jeans with that. I know the starch solutions they make. They're very useful for certain types of things in industrial
But I always say, look,
applications.
adapt or die. Just like if my practice was being affected by something, I'd have to come up with a better way. Otherwise, your company falls by the wayside. A lot of restaurants fall by the wayside. How many restaurants have we seen close over the last number of years? Right?
Too many.
Just go down Middle Country Road. They didn't make it. So in a sense, survival of the fittest, right? They didn't make it, and that's okay. So we got to wrap this up. But before we leave, I just want to mention my book. I wrote a book called Divorce: A Practical Guide. It's about 100 pages of very good information. You can get it on Amazon, or if you come to see me for a free consultation for a divorce matter, I give it out free. The show is every Wednesday at 7 o'clock. Like I said, tonight we were experimenting with different platforms. I'll tell you about that as the weeks go on to see where else you can catch us, such as YouTube and Instagram. But we're gonna see about that. But thanks for watching, and catch me next week, Wednesday at 7 o'clock.